Hi, my name is Rodney and I'm here at Special Mobility, and we would like to welcome you to the instruction and training video for Special Mobility's PRM Lift. The PRM Lift is a hoisting device that is used to aid assistant operators in boarding and seating passengers on an airplane. Passengers can be transferred for any type of wheelchair into their airplane seat. In order to operate the lift correctly, work as safely as possible while providing a pleasant experience for the passenger. Therefore, you will need a basic understanding of a PRM lift and training. So let's get started. We have divided this video into individual sections, so feel free to revisit the section if anything is still unclear at the end. The PRM lift and its basic functions. First, we will need to go over the PRM lift from top to bottom and explain all its parts. We start at the top with the slider. This is the heart of the machine. It houses the motor that operates the hoisting belt itself, and the control panel. The control panel has two buttons, either up or down, and this lowers or raises the passenger. When the buttons are released, the lift automatically stops. This black knob in the center of the slider is the locking mechanism. This either locks or unlocks the slider to shift between front and back to place the passenger correctly. This will be explained later. On the side of the slider here is the emergency release. In case of a malfunction or a drained battery, you can lower the passenger by pushing this button. The frame is the main part of the machine. This is a steel frame and houses the grips on which the machine can be moved, the turning knobs to adjust the wheelbase, the safety grips, the wheels and the brakes. On the top end of the lift are these main black grips that can be used to maneuver the machine. On the side are these red grips. These red grips you will need to use when a passenger is suspended in the lift. We'll explain this later. This is a sling where the passenger will be seated during the lifting process. On the back of the sling you will find the zipper that allows you to adjust the sling to different body types. These two buckles will close the sling once the sling is applied to the passenger. And these two black loops will connect to the swivel. The swivel connects to the sling, which in turn connects to the hoisting belt of the PRM lift. So now that we have the basic understanding of the PRM lift, we can get started on the procedure and we'll go more in depth on the functions. Safety check and preparation. Before we can use the PRM lift, we will need to make sure that the PRM lift is ready and safe to use. We would like to stress that these steps are very important and should be carried out carefully. First, we want to make sure that the lift is charged and can be powered on. The PRM lift can be charged with the provided cable. The cable can be plugged into your wall outlet and the charging end of the cable goes in here. We recommend to charge the lift overnight or in between shifts. In the overall inspection, we want to make sure that the PRM lift and the sling are undamaged and safe to use. Here we want to closely inspect the vital parts: the sling, the belt, the swivel, the frame and wheels for damages or anything that might indicate that the lift can no longer be used safely. If during the inspection you find anything that is out of the ordinary, we advise to decommission the lift until further inspection from the responsible department within your organization. The PRM lift will always need to be operated by two operators, one in the front and one in the back. Each operator will have a different set of tasks, which we will outline in the procedure. In the preparation, you will need to assess the route you are planning to take and make sure the route is clear of obstacles. If you need a ramp to enter the airplane, prepare this ahead so the passenger will not be unnecessarily long suspended. You will also need to make sure that there is no debris or anything else that can compromise the stability of the lift when transporting a passenger. Applying the sling and lifting. We start with preparing the sling. These straps of the sling should be set to the largest position. Now we need to assess the size of the person we are going to lift. Adjust the sling accordingly with these zippers on the back. We will push the passenger forward gently and place the lifting bag horizontally behind the passenger. In doing so, make sure of the following. This point of the sling touches the seat's wheelchair. These flaps of the sling point downwards. These loops of the sling are perpendicular to each other. Then lift the legs of the passenger one by one. Slide this flap of the sling underneath and connect the flap to the buckle of the sling. When tightening the fastener here, check that the loops stay perpendicular to each other. This is important for the balance and comfort of the passenger. Once these steps are all completed, we can mount the swivel to the loops here and the passenger is prepared for lifting. When boarding multiple passengers on one flight, all passengers can be prepared in advance with additional slings to work as efficient as possible. Positioning passenger by lift. Position the lift and set it with the side of the belt towards the passenger and the operating buttons outwards. Before proceeding, make sure the wheelbase is in the widest position. You can adjust the wheelbase with the two turning knobs here. The wheelbase should only be in the narrow position if needed. The stability of the lift decreases in the narrow position. So if you have the possibility to use the wide wheelbase, you should always do so. We can now make the connection between the prepared passenger and the PRM lift. Lower the belt downwards to the point that the connection between the swivel and belt can easily be made by pushing the down button. When doing so, hold the belt and guide it down, so that it doesn't accidentally swing around. You can now connect the belt to the swivel. On the center piece of the swivel there's a blue dot. It is important that the opening of the attachment point aligns with this blue dot, so this ensures that the hook of the belt runs through easily. Before you start lifting the passenger, quickly check that the passenger is still at ease, safe and comfortable. Guide the belt at the bottom and start lifting by pushing the up button. From this point, where the passenger is suspended, you should never leave the lift and the passenger unattended. Make sure that the brakes are on. When the passenger is raised to the highest position, you can ride the wheelchair away. Now determine whether the passenger will be seated on the left or right side of the aisle on the aircraft. Release the locking mechanism and position the slider to create space for the legs and the feet of the passenger. Then turn the passenger. Place the feet of the passenger on the steel beam of the lift and secure the feet with the straps. If necessary, adjust the passenger so that the passenger is comfortably positioned and tighten his knob again. Adjust the wheelbase into the narrowest position using the adjusting knobs, so that the lift can be maneuvered through the aisle of the aircraft. You can now start the ride to the seat. First, want to make sure that the brakes are released. Ensure that the passenger is comfortable. Move the lift with the passenger across the ramp through the aisle of the plane towards the designated seat. It is important to hold the lift by the grips at the top and the red grips at the bottom. Once you arrive at the designated plane seat, adjust the wheelbase to the widest position. Raise the passenger up to the needed height so that the legs and bottom of the passenger rise above the armrest of the aircraft seats. Whenever possible, fold up the armrests. You detach passenger feet from lift by loosening the straps, so that this will not have to be done in a small confinement between seats. Depending on the space between seats, we can adjust the frame and the width of the lift if necessary by loosening this knob. Push or pull the lift towards the desired plane seat. Remember to mainly use the red grips at the bottom. Once the passenger is positioned above the desired seat, the operator behind pulls on the back end of the sling, so the operator can position the back of the passenger in the backrest and ensuring that the passenger in the right position to be lowered. The operator standing in front of the passenger can lower the passenger by pushing the down button until the passenger is seated. In the meanwhile, hold the passenger's legs with one hand and guide the belt so that the belt does not accidentally hit the passenger's face. Detach the swivel from the sling and secure the belt to the lift. The lift can now be removed from the seating area and positioned in the aisle of the aircraft. Loosen the straps and buckles of the sling. Lift the legs of the passenger one by one and remove the flap of the sling from under the passenger. Gently push the passenger forward a little and remove the sling from the backside of the passenger. For the last time, check that the passenger is well, safe and comfortable. Taking out a passenger by lift. Taking a passenger out of the airplane seat is practically the same routine as taking the passenger out of the wheelchair. We will push the passenger forward gently and place the sling horizontally behind the passenger. In doing so, make sure of the following. This point sling touches the seat of the aircraft. These flaps of the sling point downwards. These loops of the sling are perpendicular to each other. Then lift the legs of the passenger one by one, slide this flap under the sling underneath and connect the flap to the buckle of the sling. When tightening the fastener here, check that the loops stay perpendicular to each other. This is important for the balance and comfort of the passenger so that the passenger is suspended straight. Once these steps are all completed, we can mount the swivel to the loops here and the passenger is prepared for lifting. Move the lift to the seat where the passenger is seated. Adjust the width of the wheelbase. Turn wheelbase to the widest position possible. Make sure the lift controls are positioned towards the outside, away from the passenger. You can now connect the belt to the swivel. Before you start lifting the passenger, quickly check that the passenger is still at ease, safe and comfortable. Guide the belt at the bottom and start lifting by pushing the up button. When the passenger is raised to the highest position, you can pull the passenger over the seats and into the aisle of the airplane with the lift and exit the airplane. Again, make sure that the route is free of obstacles or any other hazards. Adjust the wheelbase of the lift to the widest position as soon as possible. Lowering the passenger into the wheelchair. Move the slider to the side as such and rotate the passenger 45 degrees so that the passenger faces the control panel. Move the slider back to the center and place the wheelchair under the passenger. Lower the passenger with the down button until seated, while operator standing behind the passenger pulls the passenger with the sling against the wheelchair so that the passenger will be seated correctly and comfortable in the wheelchair. Detach the sling from the swivel. Loosen the straps and the buckles of the sling. Gently lift the legs of the passenger and remove the flap of the sling from under the passenger. Gently push the passenger forward a little and remove the sling from the backside. We would like to thank you for your attention. Train in a safe area, check the sections if necessary and make sure you can contribute to the seamless journey all passengers deserve.